The transport ship broke through the clouds of Volantis Prime, and Elena Vasquez pressed her face against the window like a child seeing snow for the first time. Below her, the Interstellar Academy spread across the mountain range like a city made of glass and light. Towers reached toward the purple sky. Gardens floated between buildings on anti-gravity platforms. Ships from 100 different worlds came and went from landing pads that glowed with soft blue energy. Elena was 16 years old. She was 5 feet 4 inches tall. She had brown skin, black hair tied back in a simple ponytail, and eyes that watched everything with quiet attention. She wore the standard gray uniform of a new student, and she carried everything she owned in a single bag. She was the first human to ever attend the Volantis Interstellar Academy. The academy had existed for 3,000 cycles. In that time, it had trained the leaders of empires. The children of presidents, generals, and kings walked its halls. Graduates went on to command fleets, rule planets, and shape the future of the galaxy. It was the most respected school in known space, and now for the first time, a human had been accepted. Elena did not know why they had chosen her. Her test scores were good, yes. Her teachers on Earth had called her gifted. But she knew the truth. Humans were new to the galaxy. They had only discovered faster-than-light travel 40 years ago. To species that had traveled between stars for millions of years, humans were babies taking their first steps. The transport landed, and Elena walked down the ramp into her new life. The air smelled different here, sweeter, with a hint of something like flowers and metal mixed together. The gravity was slightly lighter than Earth, and Elena felt like she might float away if she jumped too high. Students moved around her in groups, talking and laughing in languages her translator chip struggled to process. She saw her first Corthani up close. They were massive creatures, 7 feet tall, with bodies covered in natural armor that looked like stone. Their eyes were small and deep-set, and they moved with the confidence of beings who had never known fear. A group of them walked past Elena without looking at her, their heavy footsteps shaking the ground. She saw Sylvith students running on 4 legs, their bodies long and graceful like Earth's big cats. She saw Thessic with their scaled skin and forked tongues, their eyes watching everything with cold intelligence. She saw Mindari floating slightly above the ground, their pale bodies glowing with the psychic energy that let them read thoughts and move objects with their minds. And everywhere she went, she felt eyes on her. Some looked at her with curiosity. Most looked at her with something else, something that felt like pity or contempt or both. A Thessic administrator met her at the registration building. His name was Professor Voss, and he would be her academic advisor. He was tall and thin, with dark green scales and yellow eyes that never seemed to blink. "You are the human," he said. It was not a question. "Yes, sir," Elena replied. "Elena Vasquez." Professor Voss looked at his datapad. "You have been placed in the Foundation track, Basic Studies. Your dormitory's in the East Wing." He paused. "The old East Wing." Elena nodded. She had expected this. The Foundation track was for students who were not expected to succeed. The old East Wing was where the Academy put people it wanted to forget about. "Your schedule has been sent to your personal device," Professor Voss continued. "Classes begin tomorrow. Do you have questions?" Elena had 1,000 questions. She asked none of them. "No, sir." Professor Voss finally looked at her directly. His yellow eyes studied her face for a long moment. "I will be honest with you, human. Many people did not want you here. They believe your species is not ready. They believe you will fail." He put away his datapad. "My advice to you is simple. Survive the year. Complete your courses. Do not cause problems. That is all anyone expects of you." "I understand," Elena said. "Do you?" Professor Voss tilted his head. "Your people are young. You have accomplished much in a short time, but you do not yet understand your place in the galaxy. You are not stronger than the Corthani. You are not faster than the Sylveth. You cannot touch minds like the Mindari or survive poison like the Thessic." He gestured at the academy around them. "Everyone here is better than you at something. Most are better than you at everything. Remember that." Elena picked up her bag. "Thank you for the advice, Professor." She walked away before he could say anything else. The old East Wing was exactly what she had expected. The walls were cracked. The lights flickered. Her room was small, with a bed that was too short for most species, but just right for a human. The window looked out at a wall. Elena unpacked her bag slowly. She put her clothes in the small closet. She placed a photograph of her family on the desk. She set up her study tablet and downloaded her course materials. Then she sat on the bed and allowed herself exactly 5 minutes to feel afraid. She was alone. She was far from home. She was surrounded by beings who thought she was nothing. The academy had given her the worst room, the worst classes, and an advisor who expected her to fail. 5 minutes passed. Elena stood up, walked to her desk, and began to study. She studied until the lights automatically dimmed for sleep cycle. She studied the languages spoken at the academy. She studied the history of the species she would be living among. She studied the courses she would take and the courses she would not be allowed to take. And she studied the students, their strengths, their weaknesses, the way they moved, the way they thought. Professor Voss had told her to survive. He had told her that everyone was better than her at something. He was wrong. Humans had survived ice ages. They had survived predators with claws and teeth. They had survived plagues that killed millions. They had survived each other, which was the hardest thing of all. Elena Vasquez came from a long line of survivors, and she had not come to this academy simply to survive. She had come to show the galaxy what a human could do. The stars outside her tiny window burned cold and distant. Somewhere out there, Earth was spinning, and 7 billion humans were living their lives without knowing that one of their own was about to change everything. Elena finished her studies, set her alarm, and went to sleep. Tomorrow, her real education would begin. 3 months passed, and Elena Vasquez became a problem. It started small. In her mathematics class, the professor asked a question that no one could answer. The equation had been designed to show foundation track students how far behind they were. It was supposed to make them feel small. Elena raised her hand and gave the correct answer. The classroom went silent. The professor, a Mindari named Dr. Eleth, stared at her for a long moment. Then she moved on to the next topic without saying a word. A week later, Elena completed a language examination in half the expected time. She had not just learned the basic phrases. She had learned grammar, structure, and even some of the cultural meanings behind certain words. Her examiner, a Thessic scholar who had taught for 200 years, called it impossible. Humans should not be able to process alien language patterns this quickly, he said to his colleagues. Their brains are not designed for it. But Elena had done it anyway. Word began to spread through the academy. The human girl in the East Wing was strange. She was not smart like a Mindari was smart, with their perfect memory and instant calculations. She was smart in a different way. She made connections that others missed. She found patterns where others saw only chaos. She asked questions that made her professors uncomfortable because they did not know the answers. And then there was the physical training. Elena could not match a Corthani in strength. When they wrestled, she was thrown like a toy. She could not outrun a Sylveth. In races, they finished before she reached the halfway point. She could not fight a Thessic in close combat because their venom would stop her heart in minutes. But she could do something that none of them could do. She could keep going. The endurance test was simple. Students ran until they could not run anymore. The tracks circled the main arena, and each species had their expected limits. Corthani tired after 20 circuits. Sylveth could manage 30 if they paced themselves. The record was 42, set by a Mindari who used his psychic powers to push past his body's limits. Elena ran 57 circuits. She did not run fast. She ran slow and steady, her feet hitting the ground in a rhythm that never changed. One by one, other students dropped out. They sat on the ground gasping for air while Elena kept moving. Her face was red. Her legs were shaking. Sweat poured down her body, but she did not stop. The physical training instructor, a massive Corthani named Instructor Braun, finally ordered her to stop. Enough, he said. The test is over. Elena stopped. She bent over, hands on her knees, breathing hard. How? Instructor Braun asked. Your species should not have that capacity. Elena looked up at him. On my planet, she said between breaths, we used to hunt by chasing animals until they collapsed from exhaustion. We would follow them for days. We never stopped. The animals were always faster than us. But speed does not matter if you cannot escape. Instructor Braun stared at her for a long moment. Then he walked away without another word. That night, Lord Calith Vaughn heard about the human girl. Calith was everything Elena was not. He was the son of one of the most powerful Corthani families in the galaxy. His ancestors had conquered solar systems. His father had donated enough money to build an entire wing of the academy. Calith had grown up knowing that he was special, that he was destined for greatness, that the universe itself would bend to his will. He was also used to being first. First in his classes, first in combat training, first in everything that mattered. When he walked through the halls, other students moved out of his way. When he spoke, professors listened. When he wanted something, he took it. Now people were talking about a human, a small, weak, primitive human from a species that had discovered fire while Calith's ancestors were building empires among the stars. It was an insult. "She is cheating," said Thesara, one of the Thessic twins who followed Calith everywhere. "She must be. Humans cannot do what they say she is doing." "Perhaps she has illegal implants," suggested Mindrix, a Mindari whose family controlled several mining corporations. "I could scan her mind and find out." Calith held up his hand, and they fell silent. "I have been watching her," he said. "She eats alone. She studies alone. She speaks to no one unless she must. She has no friends, no allies, no protection." He smiled, and it was not a pleasant smile. "She is nothing, and it is time we reminded her of that." The campaign began slowly. Elena returned to her room one evening to find her belongings scattered across the floor. Her family photograph was cracked. Her study materials had been deleted from her tablet. She cleaned up the mess, repaired what she could, and downloaded her materials again. The next week, she was accused of cheating on an examination. A formal complaint was filed by an anonymous student. Elena had to appear before an academic board and defend herself. They found no evidence of wrongdoing, but the accusation remained in her record. She said nothing and returned to her studies. Rumors spread through the academy. The human girl had a disease that could infect other species. The human girl had bribed her way into the school. The human girl had said terrible things about Corthani culture. None of it was true, but truth did not matter. What mattered was that other students began to avoid her even more than before. Through it all, Elena watched. She noticed which students laughed when she walked past. She noticed which professors looked away when she needed help. She noticed Calith Vaughn and his circle of friends, always nearby, always watching her with hungry eyes. She understood what was happening. She had seen it before. On Earth, in schools where children learned to be cruel before they learned to be kind. The strong attacked the weak because it made them feel powerful. The others stayed silent because they were afraid of becoming targets themselves. Elena was not afraid. She was patient. In her small room in the Old East Wing, she continued her studies. She learned everything she could about Corthani biology. She memorized the fighting styles of the Thessic. She researched the limits of Mindari psychic abilities. Calith thought he was the hunter. He did not realize that Elena was studying him like a scientist studies an interesting specimen. 1 month after the harassment began, Calith decided that slow destruction was not enough. The human girl had not broken. She had not cried. She had not begged to leave the academy. He wanted to see fear in her eyes. He wanted to hear her scream. He began to plan something bigger. And Elena, alone in her room, began to plan as well. The academy had taught her many things in 3 months. It had taught her that the galaxy was cruel. It had taught her that power mattered more than justice. It had taught her that no one would help her. But Earth had taught her something more important. It had taught her that the most dangerous creature in any room was not the biggest one. It was the one that refused to give up. The Lunar Festival was the biggest celebration of the academy year. For 3 days, classes stopped. Students gathered in the great halls to feast and dance and celebrate the alignment of Volantis Prime's 3 moons. Professors forgot their lessons and joined their students in ancient rituals that dated back thousands of years. It was a time of joy. It was a time when everyone was too busy to pay attention to what happened in the shadows. Calith had chosen this moment carefully. Elena received the message on the second night of the festival. It came from an unknown sender, but the content was simple. "Come to the old engineering wing. Someone wants to help you." She knew it was a trap. The words were too careful, too designed to appeal to her loneliness. After 4 months at the academy, Elena had learned that no one wanted to help her. Anyone who did would risk becoming a target themselves. She went anyway. The old engineering wing was on the far side of the academy, past buildings that had not been used in centuries. The lights were dim. The walls were covered in dust. The only sounds were the distant echoes of festival music and Elena's own footsteps on the metal floor. She walked through empty hallways until she reached a large room filled with broken machines and forgotten equipment. Moonlight came through cracked windows, casting strange shadows across the floor. Caliph was waiting for her. He stood in the center of the room, his massive Korthani body blocking the path forward. Behind him, spread out in a half circle, were 11 others. Elena recognized the Thessic twins, their forked tongues tasting the air. She saw Mindrix the Mindari, his pale body glowing softly with psychic energy. She saw Korthani warriors, Sylveth hunters, and others whose names she did not know, but whose faces she had memorized over months of watching. 12 of them, the children of the most powerful families in the galaxy, and one human girl. "You came," Caliph said. His voice echoed in the empty space. "I was not sure you would be stupid enough." Elena stopped walking. She was 15 feet away from him, with nowhere to run. The door behind her had already closed, locked by someone she could not see. "The message said someone wanted to help me," Elena said. Her voice was calm. "I did not believe it, but I was curious who would write such an obvious lie." Caliph laughed. It was a deep, rumbling sound that shook the air. "Curious? Yes, that is what the professors say about you. The curious human, the strange human, the human who does not know her place." He took a step forward. The floor shook under his weight. "Do you know what my father said when he heard a human had been accepted to this academy? He said it was a joke. He said your species was not worthy of cleaning the floors here, let alone sitting in our classrooms." "Your father sounds like an interesting person," Elena said. Another step. "He wanted me to ignore you. He said you were too small to matter. But you did not stay small, did you? You started making noise. You started making professors talk. You started making me look bad." Elena said nothing. "I have been patient," Caliph continued. "I gave you chances to leave. I made your life difficult. I waited for you to break. But you did not break. You just kept going, like some kind of insect that does not know when to die." He stopped, close enough now that Elena had to look up to see his face. "So now we do things the old way, the way my ancestors did things when they built our empire. We take what we want, and we crush anything that stands in our path." Behind him, the others moved closer. The circle was tightening. Thessara, one of the Thessic twins, hissed with pleasure. "Let me poison her first, just a little. I want to see her twitch." "No," Mindrix said. "Let me into her mind. I want to see what a human fears. I want to make her live her worst nightmares while we watch." Caliph held up his hand. "Later. First, I want to give her a chance." He looked down at Elena with something like amusement in his small eyes. "Kneel." Elena blinked. "What?" "Kneel. Right now. Put your head on the floor and beg for forgiveness. Admit that you are nothing. Admit that your species is nothing. Promise to leave this academy and never come back. Do that, and I will let you walk out of here with only a few broken bones." He smiled. "That is more mercy than you deserve." The room was silent. 11 predators watched, waiting to see the human girl fall apart. This was the moment they had been waiting for. The moment when she would cry and beg and show them all that humans were just as weak as everyone believed. Elena looked at Caliph. Then she looked at the others one by one, meeting their eyes. The Thessic twins, the Mindari, the Korthani warriors, the Sylveth hunters. Then she did something that none of them expected. She smiled. It was not a nervous smile. It was not a scared smile. It was the smile of someone who knew a secret that no one else in the room understood. "You really have no idea, do you?" Elena said. Caliph frowned. This was not how victims were supposed to behave. "You studied our technology," Elena continued. "You studied our history, our politics, our culture. But you never studied us. You never learned what humans actually are." "You are prey," Caliph growled. You are small and weak and alone. Small, yes. Weak by your standards, maybe. But alone? Elena shook her head. Humans are never alone. Even when we are by ourselves, we carry our ancestors with us. We carry millions of years of survival in our blood. She took a step forward, toward Caliph, toward danger. Do you know what we call Earth? We call it a death world. Everything on our planet tried to kill us. The weather, the animals, the diseases. Even our own planet tried to freeze us, burn us, and shake us to pieces. And we survived all of it. We did not survive because we were strong. We survived because we never ever give up. Another step. You think you are predators. You think you are hunters. But you have never met anything like us. On Earth, we were the monsters that other monsters feared. We hunted everything. We ate everything. We conquered everything. Not because we were the biggest or the fastest or the most powerful, because we were the most stubborn creatures our planet ever made. Caliph's frown deepened. Something cold moved through his chest. Something unfamiliar. You made a mistake, Elena said. Her voice was soft now, almost gentle. You should have left me alone. You should have let me study and graduate and go home. But you cornered me. You trapped me. You gave me no way out. She stopped walking. She was close enough to touch him now. And a cornered human, she said, is the most dangerous thing in the universe. For one long moment, no one moved. Then Caliph roared and raised his fist to crush her, and Elena Vasquez showed the galaxy what humans were truly capable of. Caliph's fist came down like a hammer made of stone. It was fast for a Corthani, driven by rage and the need to silence this small creature who dared to speak to him as an equal. The blow would have shattered bones. It would have ended the fight before it began. But Elena was not there when the fist arrived. She had been watching Corthani students for 4 months. She had studied how they moved, how they shifted their weight, how their eyes changed just before they attacked. Caliph was angry, and angry people were predictable. She saw the strike coming before his arm even moved. Elena dropped low and rolled to the side. Caliph's fist hit the floor where she had been standing, cracking the metal plating. Before he could recover, she was behind him. The Corthani had natural armor. Their bodies were covered in plates that could stop bullets and blades. But Elena had studied their biology. She knew that their armor had gaps, under the arms, behind the knees, at the base of the skull where the spine connected to the head. She struck the back of Caliph's knee with her elbow. Not hard enough to break anything, but hard enough to make him stumble. As he fell forward, she jumped onto his back and wrapped her arm around his throat. Corthani could not be choked the way humans could. Their necks were too thick, their windpipes too protected. But they could be blinded. Elena drove her fingers into the soft tissue around his eyes. Caliph screamed and threw himself backward, trying to crush her against the floor. She let go at the last second, rolling away as his massive body crashed down. The whole exchange took less than 5 seconds. The others stared in shock. Their leader was on the ground, clawing at his face, roaring in pain and confusion. The small human girl was standing again, breathing hard but uninjured. "Get her!" the Sarah screamed. The Thesic twins attacked together. They were fast, faster than humans, and their claws dripped with venom that could stop a heart in minutes. On Earth, they would have been apex predators. Here in the academy, they had never lost a fight. Elena did not try to match their speed. Instead, she grabbed a piece of broken machinery from the floor and threw it at the first twin's face. It was not a strong throw, but it did not need to be. The twin raised her arms to block, and in that moment of distraction, Elena moved. She had learned something important about Thesic biology. Their venom glands needed time to refill between uses. If they struck and missed, they had to wait before they could produce more poison. The twins had been saving their venom for her, which meant their glands were full. But full glands were also sensitive. Elena hit the first twin in the throat, right where the venom sac connected to the delivery system. The blow was not hard enough to kill, but it was enough to rupture the internal membrane. The twin collapsed, choking on her own poison. The second twin screamed and slashed at Elena's arm. The claws cut through skin, and fire spread through Elena's veins. Venom. Not a full dose, but enough to slow her down, enough to make her muscles burn. A human would have stopped. A human would have fallen. Elena kept moving. She grabbed the second twin's arm and twisted. Thesic joints were flexible, but they were not meant to bend in certain directions. The twin shrieked as her elbow popped out of its socket. Elena pushed her away and turned to face the next attacker. Mindrix, the Mindari, floated forward, his eyes glowing with psychic power. "Enough of this," he said. "Let me see what you fear, human. Let me break your mind from the inside." His consciousness reached out and touched Elena's thoughts. For a moment, everything went white. Mindrix had broken minds before. He had reached into the thoughts of criminals and enemies and turned their own fears against them. He had made strong warriors see their worst nightmares until they begged for death. The human mind should have been easy, primitive, simple. Instead, he found chaos. Elena's mind was not organized like other species. It was a storm of images and memories and emotions, all tangled together in ways that made no logical sense. He saw ice ages and fire. He saw predators with teeth and humans with spears. He saw wars that lasted generations and loves that lasted lifetimes. He saw fear, yes, but fear that had been faced so many times it had become an old friend. And underneath it all, he felt something that terrified him. Determination. Not the cold determination of a Korthani warrior. Not the calculated determination of a Thesic assassin. This was something older. Something that had been forged in millions of years of struggle against a universe that wanted humans dead. It was the determination of a species that simply refused to die. Mindrix screamed and broke the connection. Blood poured from his nose. His psychic glow flickered and died. He fell to the ground unconscious. The remaining attackers hesitated. 3 of their strongest fighters were down, and the human girl was still standing. Her arm was bleeding where the Thesic had cut her. Her body was shaking from the venom in her blood, but her eyes were clear, and she was still moving toward them. A Sylvath hunter charged at her on 4 legs, moving faster than any human could run. Elena did not try to dodge. Instead, she waited until the last possible moment, then stepped to the side and drove her knee into the Sylvath's chest as she passed. The hunter tumbled across the floor, her breath knocked out of her lungs. 2 Korthani warriors attacked together. Elena grabbed one of them by his armor plate and used his own momentum to throw him into his companion. They crashed to the ground in a tangle of limbs. Another attacker. Another. Another. Elena kept fighting. Her body was failing. The venom was spreading. Her muscles screamed with every movement. Blood dripped from cuts and scratches. But she did not stop. Humans were persistence predators. On Earth, they had hunted by chasing animals until those animals collapsed from exhaustion. They had followed their prey for days, running and walking and running again, never giving up. The animals were always faster. The animals always escaped at first, but the animals could not run forever. Humans could. 4 minutes after the fight began, 12 elite students lay on the ground. Some were unconscious. Some were groaning in pain. Some were simply staring at the ceiling, trying to understand what had happened. Elena stood in the center of the room. Her body was a map of injuries. The venom had spread through her system, making every breath feel like fire. She could barely see through the sweat and blood in her eyes, but she was standing, and they were not. Caliph looked up at her from the floor. His arm was bent at an angle that arms should not bend. His face was swollen and bloody, and in his eyes Elena saw something she had never seen in a Korthani before. Fear. "What are you?" he whispered. Elena walked toward him slowly. Each step was agony. Each breath was a battle. But she kept moving until she stood over him, looking down at the creature who had tried to break her. "I am human," she said. Her voice was quiet, but it echoed in the silent room. "I come from a death world. My ancestors survived things that would have killed your species 100 times over. They did not survive because they were strong. They survived because they refused to stop fighting." She knelt down so that her face was close to his. "You wanted to teach me a lesson. You wanted to show me my place. But you are the ones who learned something tonight." Caliph said nothing. He could not find words. "Remember this moment," Elena said. "Remember how it felt to be prey. And the next time you think about hurting someone weaker than you, remember that you never know what they are capable of until you give them no other choice." She stood up and walked toward the door. Behind her, 12 children of the galaxy's most powerful families lay broken on the floor. None of them tried to stop her. Elena made it halfway across the academy before her body finally gave out. The thesic venom had spread too far. Her legs stopped working. Her vision went dark. She collapsed on the stone path outside the medical center, and the last thing she heard was someone screaming for help. She woke up 3 days later in a private room. The walls were white. The machines around her hummed with soft sounds. Tubes connected her body to devices that were slowly cleaning the poison from her blood. A window showed a view of the Academy's gardens, where flowers from 100 worlds bloomed in carefully designed patterns. She was not in the old East Wing anymore. A Korthani nurse noticed that she was awake and left the room quickly. Minutes later, a tall figure walked through the door. Elena recognized him from images she had studied during her first week at the Academy. Headmaster Vetheran, the ancient Mindari, who had led the institution for over 300 years. He was older than anyone Elena had ever met. His pale body was thin and fragile, but his eyes burned with an intelligence that seemed to see everything at once. He floated rather than walked, moving to a chair beside her bed and lowering himself slowly. "Elena Vasquez," he said. His voice was soft, like wind through dry leaves. "The human who defeated 12 of my students in single combat." Elena tried to sit up. Pain shot through her body, and she fell back against the pillow. "Do not move," the headmaster said. "The venom did significant damage. You will recover, but it will take time." "What happened?" Elena asked. Her voice was rough from days of silence. "A maintenance drone recorded the entire incident. The footage has been reviewed by my staff, by the Academy's board of directors, and by approximately 4 billion beings across the galaxy who watched it on the information networks." Elena closed her eyes. "The footage got out. It was released within hours. Someone on my security team apparently felt the galaxy deserved to see what happened. I have not yet decided if I agree with that decision, but it is too late to change it now." Elena opened her eyes. "The others, the students who attacked me, what happened to them?" The headmaster was quiet for a moment. "They survived. Most of their injuries were not permanent. Lord Calith Vaughn will need reconstructive surgery on his arm, but he will recover. The thesic twin who ruptured her own venom gland will require months of treatment, but she will live. And their punishment? All 12 have been expelled from the Academy. Their families have been notified that they are no longer welcome on this campus." Elena stared at him. She had expected something different. Protection for the powerful. Punishment for the victim who dared to fight back. That was how things worked in the galaxy she had come to understand. "Lord Vaughn's family demanded your expulsion," the headmaster continued. "They demanded that humanity be banned from all Academy programs permanently. They threatened to withdraw their funding, to use their political connections to destroy this institution, to make my life very difficult. And you refused." The headmaster tilted his head. "I have led this academy for 300 years. I have educated the children of emperors and criminals. I have seen civilizations rise and fall. Lord Vaughn's father believes that his money and his power make him important. He is wrong. The only thing that matters in this universe is potential. And you, Elena Vasquez, have shown more potential in 4 months than most students show in 4 years." He reached into his robe and pulled out a small device. He placed it on the table beside her bed. "This is your new student identification. You have been transferred to the Advanced Studies track. You will be assigned new quarters in the Scholars Wing. You will have access to resources and courses that are normally reserved for students of exceptional ability." Elena looked at the device. "Why?" "Because you earned it, and because the galaxy is watching." He stood up, floating slightly above the floor. "I will tell you something that I have not told anyone else. When I accepted your application, many people asked me why. They said humans were not ready. They said your species was too young, too primitive, too dangerous. They said you would fail. Professor Voss told me to survive the year. That was all anyone expected of me. Professor Voss is a good administrator, but he lacks imagination." The headmaster moved toward the door, then stopped. "I accepted you because I was curious. Your species interests me. You are young, yes, primitive by our standards perhaps, but there is something in you that I have not seen in a very long time. What is that? The headmaster looked at her with eyes that had seen millennia pass. Fire, he said. Your species burns with a fire that older civilizations have lost. You fight when you should surrender. You hope when you should despair. You keep going when any rational being would stop. He opened the door. The galaxy will underestimate you. They will look at your small bodies and your short history, and they will think you are nothing. They will corner you. They will try to break you. They will learn, as Lord Vaughn learned, that this is a mistake. What happens now? Elena asked. The headmaster smiled. It was a strange expression on his ancient face. Now? Now you rest. You heal. You return to your studies. And in a few months, when the next class of students arrives, you will not be alone. Over 3,000 humans have applied for admission since your footage was released. We will accept as many as we can. Your species has announced itself to the galaxy, Elena Vasquez. There is no going back. He left. The door closed behind him. Elena lay in her bed and stared at the ceiling. Her body ached. Her mind was tired. But for the first time since she had arrived at the academy, she did not feel alone. Somewhere on Earth, her family was watching the footage. Her mother and father and little brother were seeing what their daughter had done. Her teachers were seeing. Her friends were seeing. 7 billion humans were watching one of their own stand against impossible odds and refuse to fall. She thought about what the headmaster had said. Fire. Humans burned with fire. He was right. Humans were not the strongest species. They were not the fastest or the smartest or the most powerful. But they carried something inside them that could not be measured or quantified. A spark that refused to go out no matter how many times the universe tried to extinguish it. Elena reached over and picked up her new student identification. The holographic display showed her face, her name, and her new status. Advanced studies, full scholarship, priority access to all academy facilities. She smiled. 4 months ago, she had arrived at this academy alone and afraid. She had been given the worst room, the worst classes, and the worst advice. Everyone expected her to fail. Now she lay in a private medical suite in the best wing of the school. 12 of the galaxy's most privileged students had tried to destroy her, and instead she had destroyed them. Billions of beings had watched a human girl prove that size and strength and history meant nothing when faced with determination and courage. And somewhere out there, thousands of young humans were preparing to follow in her footsteps. Elena set down the identification and closed her eyes. The stars were vast and cold and full of dangers. The galaxy was ruled by species who had traveled between worlds while humans were still living in caves. The road ahead would be long and difficult, with enemies at every turn. But humans had faced long roads before. They had crossed deserts and oceans and frozen wastelands. They had survived plagues and wars and disasters that should have ended their species 100 times over. They had done all of this because they refused to give up, and now they had reached the stars. Elena Vasquez fell asleep with a smile on her face. Tomorrow she would begin her studies again. Tomorrow she would show the galaxy that humanity was just getting started. And somewhere far away, watching the same stars through the same infinite darkness, the ancient civilizations of the galaxy looked at their screens and wondered what they had awakened. The age of humanity had begun, and the universe would never be the same.